Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and this is the show where we talk all things BYU, Big 12, and realignment. And today we're going to be talking about all three as we hold a draft for potential Big 12 expansion candidates. And now, before I get into that, let me introduce my guest here to help me do this. I've got my fellow Big 12 College Huddle cohorts in Bob Trollsby from Cocaine Willie, a K-State centered show, and also Brandon from the Catskiller Social Club, which is obviously a Cincy centered show. Welcome, guys.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having us, Trevor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good times here. Ready to get after it with this draft and see what we come up with.
Excellent. Yes, I'm very excited to see what you guys, your thought process on this. And so, but before we get started, I got to know the origins of the name Cocaine Willie.
So we've got this logo back here. You can see it back there. It's kind of the Shaggy Cat, I think, is the official name of it, but you can see it a little bit more clearly there. It looks like a wildcat that just did a couple of lines in a bathroom stall somewhere in Aggieville. So it's affectionately been named by our fan base as the Cocaine Willie mascot or logo. None of us are avid cocaine users or at all. So that's the story behind the logo and the name of the podcast.
Excellent. Glad to hear that you're not doing lines of cocaine. Even though there may be weeks when you feel like that's necessary. So what we're doing today, and I got to make this clear. So we're all going to go through we're doing a snake draft to select potential teams that we would like to see join in the Big 12 if the Big 12 were to expand. Now, we are not making predictions. This isn't, what we're saying will happen or likelihood. We are simply saying if we were here and we were doing a draft and we were able to pick which teams, and then we're picking the order. And so the outcome in no way reflects what we think is going to happen, or even how likely any of these schools is. It's just really kind of a power rankings of what we would like to see. Is that pretty clear? I'm probably still going to get some complaints in the comments, or that always happens. So as we make our picks, we'll go through, obviously, as a team is selected, it's off the board, and then we have to move on, and then we will kind of compare. So we are only doing up to 6 picks. That would put the conference at 22. A lot of people think conferences will go to 20, others to 24. We thought 6 teams each was kind of the sweet spot with this. Now, any school is on the table except for SEC or Big 10. We realize that unless somebody's kicked out, nobody's going to take that kind of a pay cut at this point to come join the Big 12. So we are at least realistic in that regard. Everybody else is on the table. So are there any other details I missed before we get started?
No, I'm just bummed that I can't pick Vanderbilt. Come on.
Well, you can always pick Wake Forest instead. All right, so let me pull up the draft board here. So as we mentioned, we're doing a snake draft. We did the order ahead of time. We put in a random generator, and this is the order it came out with. So I will be starting with the first pick, which I did not want because it's putting me in the situation where I feel like I'm obligated to pick Florida State. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab Florida State off the board as a first pick. The only reason why I would be hesitant is I know they're not looking to be in the Big 12. They are doing everything they can to get out of the ACC. You bring them in, are they going to be another Texas? Are they going to cause a lot of problems? But they are definitely the biggest brand on the table right now. And so I feel like the value and that they bring the conference, we just got to go with FSU.
All right. So I'm up next. I'm going to go with the Clemson Tigers, the University of Clemson. I feel like when you look at that program across the board, they're really solid athletically. in the three major sports that we all know and love of men's basketball, they have their years in men's basketball, but football and then men's baseball as well. They do men's baseball, just baseball. They do a phenomenal job in baseball as well. And they've got a pretty storied tradition. And I think at least all three of those sports. So when you look at the amount of championships they've won and college football playoffs that they've been in, especially the last 15 years, I think they're one of the most solid additions that you could add. If you're poaching the ACC and they're willing to come over, let's go get Clemson.
All right, solid choice. No comments there. So Brandon, you're up with 3 and 4.
The content I could make if Dabo Swinney was a coach in this league, just making fun of that man would be worth it in and of itself. So yes. I like the pick there.
You guys, what I will say about Clemson is more than Florida State is I do feel like, well, now they also would see it as probably not their ideal destination at this point, but I do think that Clemson would be a better fit in the Big 12 than Florida State.
And their fans on Twitter have seemingly been way more interested in the idea of moving to the Big 12 than Florida State fans. So I feel like they're already welcome in the fold. If they want to make the move tomorrow, they can make the move. But
we'll take them.
I like it. You guys also did what's best for the conference with your first 2 picks, so that when you went after the like the brand name. So I'm going to be a little bit more selfish here with my first one. I'm glad I didn't have one of the first 2 picks actually, and I'm going to go with Louisville. Very close to Cincinnati, long time rival in all sports with Cincinnati. Most recently, in the American in the Big East, they've been solid the last 10 years in football. Since joining the ACC, I think they're like 72 and 56. Basketball, they've had their national championships as well, so they'd be a good fit. Well, they did until they hired a Xavier coach and Chris Mack, and then that kind of went down the toilet. But the basketball is there as well, so I think that would be a good fit in both regards for the top 2 sports.
And how many of those 56 losses came under Satterfield?
He was ACC Coach of the Year in 2019. So like, I don't know. It's weird.
Just had to get my Satterfield jab in there.
No, well, trust me. You wait till the season, you'll have plenty more. Yeah. So I guess with a snake draft, I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm going to keep it in the region here, starting off the second round, and I'm going to go Pitt. The Pitt Panthers. I mean, you get the backyard brawl with them in West Virginia, which is as hostile as almost any rivalry gets. And then, with us, it's been a trophy game with the River City rivalry. And I mean, 2 like sports cities that just hate each other, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, and every level it's there. So I would certainly, we have them on the schedule here this year. We beat them there last year. So to make that, a permanent thing going forward, I'd be all for that.
It's funny because Big 12 Twitter for so long, Pitt was one of those teams that everybody was saying, oh, we got to go after them. And they've really fallen by the wayside. And I don't know if this is the case for everybody, but from what I've seen, the Pitt fan reaction on Twitter is very much reflects the attitude of Utah fans. And so in some ways it almost makes it perfect, and I've seen them going at each other and it just is, it's too perfect when I see that, but they do bring that regionality. They do bring that rivalry, but you get more malcontent fans, just like the Utah fans. Is like, do we want more of those? Or maybe that just makes it more interesting, but that's where like Pitt, I definitely see the value. But then I'm also like,
it just makes it that much better when you beat them.
Yeah.
For sure. As you will hopefully find out in the first few weeks of the season.
Yes.
Again,
yes.
Yeah. I am gonna go with the U. I'm gonna throw it up. Get the University of Miami. I think when you look at the brands that are left in the ACC, based on who's already been picked, and when you want to look at athletic prowess over the last 30 years or so, Miami's near the top of that list, if not at the top of that list. Again, very good across the board in all athletics, not just football. They had their bad years here in the 2010s and more recently, but they got Mario Cristobal. Maybe they'll be on the rise. They've definitely taken an uptick from a recruiting perspective, and from a basketball standpoint, Jim Larinaga had them cooking 2 years ago. Went to the Final Four. Baseball, they've been a great baseball program for a really long time. So when I'm thinking about kind of the big three, that's a big part of the criteria here. They check all those boxes. They also have a huge endowment. So that's important. You want to bring in brands and schools that have deep pockets, so they're not necessarily going to be looking for a lifeboat from the conference or that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a high value draft pick, because at number 5, you pick up probably what's the third biggest brand in the conference. So Miami has, you have their detractors, and there's some reasons to not be in love with everything they have, but I think you laid out their value pretty well. All right, for my pick, I think the biggest brands are off the table. There's some other decent brands that are left that are all comparable. And so I too am going to now be a little bit selfish out of those brands that are similar, and I'm going to pick one close to me. I'm actually out of Virginia, so I'm going to take Virginia Tech. Now, they've been down lately, but I do think that they have the potential. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they were perennial, top 15 team. They'd always get punked by somebody like ECU or Old Dominion or something. But other than that, they'd have pretty strong seasons and competitive in the ACC. I think they would be a pretty good fit in the conference, and not to mention their rivalry with West Virginia. So, and driving distance for me. So it really works out.
That's a win-win. When I think about the ACC schools too, Virginia Tech is near the top of the list of just like culture fits, I think, for the Big 12. So I would definitely welcome them. Also, it would be nice to not be the only school that doesn't have a national championship in the Big 3 sports. So welcome in, Virginia Tech.
All right. So this is still with me. And you talk about fit. Living in Virginia, I'll tell you about at least half of the Virginia Tech gear that I see people wearing is camo. So you can't tell me that that is not a great fit for the Big 12.
Welcome to the Truck Stop 12, baby.
Yeah.
And going along with that, if you watch the College World Series at all, you know that another team confoundingly had camo uniforms, and that was NC State. So that is going to be my third pick here. I think also a similar brand to performances Virginia Tech. I just mentioned their capability in baseball, but we know a solid football team and basketball. We all know and are well aware of their deep surprising run. What a Cinderella story this year that they made in March Madness. So and they get you in both these schools. With these 3 picks, I mean, we're already in Florida, but we get a second one in Florida, and then we get our toes into Virginia and North Carolina, which is something that the SECs wanted to do, for some time. So I think this sets up the conference pretty well.
I love the NC State pick. When we played them in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, we had our fellow College Huddle NC State podcast, the Red White podcast. We had them on to preview the Pop-Tart Bowl with us, and it was – they're a great fan base, and they're a phenomenal podcast, so check them out if you get a chance. Love the pick. I, with number 3, a little surprised that NC State went before their hated rivals, the University of North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm going to go with the Tar Heels. When you think about the Big 12 doubling down on basketball, this is a must add. I think if you can get them and you aren't able to get, if the Big 10, for whatever reason, the SEC aren't going to expand, if you can get a North Carolina, I think that should be near the top of the list, if not, I guess third on the list if we're going by mine. But strong baseball, strong basketball, strong football. Mac Brown, what's not to like about Mac Brown? You're bringing him back to the Big 12. That would be phenomenal. And, well, granted, who knows how long he's going to be coaching, but you can't argue with the fact that North Carolina is one of the bluest of blue bloods when it comes to basketball. So when you want to double down on the basketball, if you want to decouple that from football at some point from a revenue perspective, having a brand like North Carolina makes it an absolute no-brainer. You'd be able to have conference games between North Carolina and KU every single year if you wanted to. That'd be pretty elite.
You stole my pick. I love that pick. that was my. Once I saw NC State on the board, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be able to get the Tar Heels." But took them out
Yeah,
from under them.
that might have been a flub on my part, but I don't see them as good of a fit. And now that's stupid because you really do have to pick up brand value. And so, I mean, that's a solid pick. You've got 3 really, really good brands that you've been able to pick up here. But I feel like, again, they would be kind of like Texas, only not as good in football. And so not really, bringing that same kind of value. And I don't know, but yeah, definitely a solid pick. A very, very big brand, and love what it does for basketball in the conference.
It's similar to KU though in that regard. Like
Yeah.
KU fans and North Carolina fans, really not that different. They're basketball fans first and football fans second. And I don't necessarily see KU trying to throw their weight around all that much when it comes to trying to be, maybe their fans do on Twitter and stuff sometimes, but in reality, most of the KU fans I know from back home in Kansas are pretty rational for the most part, although that goes with a grain of salt. But I married a Texas fan, so I know what Texas fans are like. And when I think about the North Carolina fans that I know and the KU fans that I know and the Texas fans that I know, I don't see the similarities with Texas as much, but there are times where that's certainly the case.
Yeah, I just meant in sense of being elite, like the whole mentality of being better than everyone else. But no, sure, certainly a value add there. All right, your third pick, Brandon.
I didn't want to pick this team this soon, but if you're taking basketball blue bloods off the board, then I'm going to go with Duke. They're only 1 game over 500 in the last 10 years in football, but in that same span, they're 5-1 in bowl games, which is a wild stat if you think about it. If you can get both of North Carolina and Duke, we actually get a separate basketball, TV deal. I mean, there's no one ever catching us in the game of basketball if you can take North Carolina and Duke to this conference.
Well, and with your specific iteration of the Big 12, having Duke and Louisville is pretty solid too when you think about basketball, because Louisville, granted, no more Pitino, but a pretty storied tradition in basketball, and seems like they've got things rocking and rolling again with their new head coach that they brought in. So I would not be I'd be buying Louisville stock right now from a basketball standpoint.
Yeah. So snake draft. Here we go. I've been all over the East Coast here with my first 3 picks, and I'm going to be, I guess, the first person to go outside of the ACC here as well. I'm going to go completely on the other side of the map here, and I'm going to go the San Diego State Aztecs. Way out of there. As a history teacher, I love their name, the Aztecs. Super cool helmets, a growing football brand. You get into California, which technically we're not. We got Arizona State, which is about as close as you can be. But this solidifies it. San Diego's a fun city as well. Wouldn't mind going out there to a November football game or something. So I switched it up there. I like the Aztecs.
That's a good pick. I know that the Pac-12 was at least evaluating them as a potential new member before they completely collapsed and folded. So I think that's a good ad. They've been ballied about quite a bit on the last few years as being one of the next, or maybe potentially one of the last G5 teams that could be elevated to a Power 4 level at this point.
All right.
Well, I will bite the bullet. I'm going to take UVA, and that might be my last ACC pick if I'm being honest. But I'm taking UVA. Fun fact, my dad used to coach baseball at Creighton University, and he coached Brian O'Connor. So I actually have some affinity toward the Cavs a little bit when it comes to their baseball program. But again, they've won a national championship in basketball in the last 5 years. They have won a national championship in baseball in the last 10 years. Football wise, there's a lot of work to do there, but I don't think there's any arguing with the fact that they have a pretty committed fan base, at least from my interactions with them. Trevor, you may disagree living in Virginia, but they seem to kind of ride or die, at least on the basketball and the baseball front. And if they can get football cooking again at some point, their fans hopefully will be on board with that, but not necessarily a cultural fit. They fit more with the North Carolina crowd, I would say. A little bit more wine and cheese, if we're going to make the Texas comparison, more the wine and cheese kind of crowd. But maybe my draft is just wine and cheese brands at this point. I don't know, except for Clemson.
You mentioned their fans. I just didn't know UVA had any. No, that's not entirely true, and I have no issue with UVA fans. BYU former coach Bronco Mendenhall was coaching there for a while, and my dad sort of knew someone that was very low down on the coaching staff, so we were able to go to at least a game a year while he was there, and so I enjoyed, kind of rooting for UVA during that period, but and I definitely pull for all Virginia schools, but no, my only issue with the UVA pick is they're kind of like UNC. They bring a lot of the downside with not as much of the upside because the brand isn't as big. Basketball isn't as good, not as storied. I mean, they're not really a true blue blood, even though they've kind of acted like one for the last several years since they've had a lot of success, obviously winning a championship. But they don't really bring much in football. And UNC at least has, competitive teams. And so that's where I'm a little bit down on the addition of UVA. I understand their appeal to the Big Ten, for academics and SEC for regionality. But a little bit less, and SEC doesn't really need to make their conference deeper at football. So for us, I think I don't know. For me, there's not as much value with UVA, but I still think obviously they bring a lot to the table. Okay, so I'm kind of where things are turning, and I got to make two picks, and so I'm trying to decide here. Oh shoot. What I'm going to do, I think, is, and this guy might. Well, what do I have here? Those three. I could take both of the Pac-2 schools here is what I'm maybe, but actually what I'm going to do is pick another school, the last one I think from the ACC for me, and that's Georgia Tech. Now, a lot of the complaints that I just made about UVA also apply to Georgia Tech, but they do get you into Atlanta. It is regional, and I think they're still, I think they've got baseball, which is I think a distant third when it comes to realignment thought process. But I don't know. I think they bring a lot there. I might end up regretting that pick, but I think that they are a team that or a school that brings a lot of value, not necessarily from on field, but from a lot of the other aspects that they bring. And then my next pick, do you guys want to slam that pick at all, or you're happy that I made it?
I would like to, yes. I hate Georgia Tech. I think they should have been relegated to like the MAC like 10 years ago. I don't remember the last time they've been relevant. I don't remember the last time that they won a meaningful game. I honestly forget that they exist more often than not. Nothing against you, Trevor, but easily my least favorite pick of the draft so far.
Wow.
Okay.
Love it.
The Atlanta market does nothing for you, huh?
Not really. No.
All right. Maybe that would have been better as a final pick. I think they probably still would have been on the table then. So my next pick, I'm going to go with Oregon State. I want to grab one of the two. I think these are good. Both are very, very good programs in the Northwest. They fit the Big 12, I think, in a large part. And I still think there's a chance potentially down the road that they end up in the Big 12. But again, I think they'll be there and they'll be available. So I think for now, that's why it came lower on my list. And differentiating between the two, I think of them pretty similarly in my mind. I just thought we already have two sets of Cougars in the conference. And so I went with the Beavers in this case.
All right. I guess I'm going to go with the other. Well, I don't want them to be on an island. I'm gonna throw you guys a curveball. I'm gonna pick Tulane.
Ooh.
Throwing a little bit of a curveball there, but again, we've played Tulane two of the last. No, we're playing them in a. We did a home and home with them. We played them at home 2 years ago. We're playing them in New Orleans next year. But I think being able to bring in Louisiana as a recruiting ground, we've had some really good talent come from Louisiana, and it's been more like diamonds in the rough kind of guys. If you get the ability to go down to Louisiana, go down to New Orleans, and recruit more of that talent a little bit more diligently, I think there's some more recruiting gains that can be made there in New Orleans and Louisiana. But being able to get another footprint within SEC country, I think, is valuable in a state where realistically the only competition is LSU. I mean, if you have another Power 4 team that's going to be in Louisiana, it's not going to be Monroe, it's not going to be Lafayette. So I think Tulane is they used to be in the SEC as well. I don't know. They've got more SEC championships than half of the SEC does in football. So I'm going with Tulane. That was a very rambly way for me to get to my answer, but I'm going with Tulane.
I got to say that matchup between Tulane and K-State is going to be maybe my all-time for the season uniform matchup.
Yes.
All season. I love K-State's classic look and the purple, but I love Tulane's current look, and with the addition of that, the way they work in the powder blue with their green, I just they do have some bad looks, but for the most part, I love their uniforms.
Agreed.
Yeah, I do like that pick. That was probably going to be my last pick. We're on the same wavelength there. But I've been to a game on campus at Tulane. It's been like maybe 10 years ago or so, but it was a good time. And obviously a fun city to travel to whenever you can. I do like that. On top of the recruiting aspect, I like it a lot. I'm going to go back down into the American as well. I'm going to take on a short list of teams that I absolutely loathe entirely, and that's the Memphis Tigers.
Oh, no.
I despise Memphis, and for that reason, I would like to play them every year. They're 88-41 over the past 10 years, right? They're as a G5 program that they've been pretty successful. Beat us a couple of times the last time next to last year that we were in the American. And hear me out on this comparison. They have all the FedEx money in the world, right? Their facilities are good. I don't know, whatever it is that they got the money.
Bowl.
The Liberty. Well, okay, I got you there. But here, this is a comparison. So having Deion Sanders in the conference now, he's a national brand name, right? More so than Colorado football has been in the last, I don't know,
since Eric Bieniemy was the running back, or Rashawn Salam at least.
Yeah. Penny Hardaway kind of brings that in basketball. Not the same swagger, not the same outspokenness, but he's a national brand name that would be a nice add in basketball as well.
You're not wrong. I mean,
I hate the Memphis pick, but I understand it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, there's a reason why they were in heavy conversation with the conference at one point. And so I don't think it's a terrible pick. I know a lot of people slam on them, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and bring in definitely another very good basketball team, if nothing else.
Yes. So I really like, that's just a hate pick. Like I said, one of the most hated universities that I have on a short list. So I like that. For my last pick here, like I said, it was probably going to be Tulane. So I gotta dig down here deep in my list, and I'm for no other reason other than every sports organization is trying to invade their city. The Big 12 media days. I'm going to take UNLV and sort of establish that in Vegas as one of the hottest sports cities there is right now.
Wow. Okay. Didn't see that coming. I
don't hate it. It's, and they do have some tradition. When you go back to the Running Rebs, they had Lon Kruger as their head coach for a while in basketball. They do have some tradition there. They've won some national championships in sports that you wouldn't have expected them to. So I get it. I get it. Both of those picks I get.
No, and you've put together quite the basketball grouping there.
I'd love to see a map, like maps of all three of these. Yeah.
I'll put some maps together afterwards and that we can put up for sure.
Man,
I like it.
Man, okay. I'm like really struggling now with my last pick. I'm almost. This is just I don't know. Maybe this is just like a heartfelt. I want to pick this school because I love picking them in major upsets every single year in football. I'm gonna go with App State. Totally out of left field, complete curveball. But when I look at the map and kind of how geographically I've set things up for ourselves here, I feel like they fit geographically with the other teams that I've picked to really shore up that eastern seaboard, if you will, of the Big 12, where I feel like, with the exception of adding Cincinnati, it's been pretty neglected for West Virginia, and UCF is kind of on an island on their own. By adding in Miami, App State, North Carolina, Clemson, you're at least, I mean, if I had added Georgia Tech, you would have had states that touch each other almost all the way up to Virginia, and then over to West Virginia and over to Ohio. So that eastern seaboard would have been kind of all together there. Granted, I didn't pick Georgia Tech, so that's not the case. But this at least kind of connects most of that geography of the eastern portion of the conference. But I just love App State. They've got one of the most picturesque football stadiums, baseball stadiums in college sports. Being able to be there in the fall would be epic. They're one of the most exciting G5 teams for me every year to get to watch. So if we're elevating another G5 team, I think App State has done a lot to deserve getting promoted. So that's my list.
Another place that Satterfield helped put on the map.
Yeah, indeed. And Eli Dorkwitz from Mizzou.
Wow. Okay, I was not expecting that.
I kind of also wanted to give you the pack too, since you said that already.
Well, actually, you made it difficult because what I wanted to, and I'm going to go ahead and end with Wazoo here to go along with Oregon State. I think it, same thing, traveling partner, and also gives you that northwest corner, officially, full-time Pacific time zone, and some history, and also, as opposed to the guys the schools you guys are elevating, they've already been P5 programs and had some success, and so I think that they bring that element to it and to the table. Some existing rivalries, also for BYU, some regionality there as well. For my final pick, I wasn't expecting both of them to be on the board. For my final pick, I was going to pick Boise State, which would have still given a travel partner to one of them. I think they are, in terms of schools that are left, even the G5 schools, they're the biggest brand that's not on this list here. There's some demographics and geographics that are against them, but I think, when a lot of realignment is being driven by TV ratings, I think while Boise State has lost some of its shine over recent years, I think, being a power level, they have the potential to get some of that back and be a draw for eyeballs. And then also, I've just loved the rivalry that BYU and Boise State developed while BYU is an independent. Now, having said that, that's not my pick. You guys forced my hand and I had to pick, I went with an established P5 program over them. So that is my last pick. Okay, so we already mentioned, Brandon, your picks are, this definitely leaning into the basketball conference right there.
Oh, yeah.
I think Bob Trollsby, you've got what would you say, the wine and cheese, and then you throw App State into it. So,
yeah, App State and Clemson, not necessarily wine and cheese. Maybe Clemson a little bit, but App State's kind of like Virginia Tech further south.
Okay, and then I don't know. I feel like mine's a little bit more of the boilerplate, kind of a lot of the same things you see generally. So. Okay, well, this has been fun. This would be very interesting if realignment actually worked out like what we've done here. So let's leave it up to viewers to get on and let us know in the comments which draft board, who you think won this draft and who made the strongest overall additions to the conference, to the Big 12. And yeah, I'll get some maps put together for each of us. We can put those up on social media too, and compare our conferences that way. But do you guys, looking at this, do you have any regrets from the picks you've made, or anything you wish you'd done differently?
Absolutely. No, I was already the reason I went with Tulane is because I didn't want to pick Wazoo and leave them on an island, because they would have been just kind of the only school anywhere near them. So when I was thinking about mine, I was very much thinking about geography. And what I would have done in retrospect, seeing the draft board now, is I probably would have gone Wazoo, and then on the last pick around Boise State, just because that would have given them more of a travel partner, kind of a natural rivalry there, being right next door, Idaho and Washington. So that's really the only regret I have.
Yeah, I mean, I like mine. I'm not in love with mine. But you know what I mean? So like I like the regionality I went for in the first two rounds, and kind of get that Big East feel back for a little pod there, going to that. Duke being the only Carolina school, it's kind of unique for me, I think. And then after that, it just gets wild. So I like it though. I'd be excited to be a part of expansion that had my 6 for sure.
We all have a Carolina school though. I think that's the one common thread here.
All in the third round.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that was by design. I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, in Brandon, with your picks, I mean, a lot of these schools were all in the conversation, over a year ago, until the pack, until that conversation picked up, and so they're all good. Well, I mean, in terms of the G5 schools, they all make a lot of sense at this point. I wonder if we, at least hopefully the Big 12 is in position to get bigger brands, even if it's not every school that's on our lists, but certainly I have no issue with that. And like Big 12 BYU has a lot of history with San Diego State, UNLV. So I wouldn't hate it either, even if it's not the biggest, sexiest brands that you can put out there in terms of product. I think it would actually be pretty cool. My regret, when I was regretting it, even as I was picking it, was still Georgia Tech. I think that's more of like a TV network value add, as opposed to a fan value there. So I don't know, but overall I think these are all make a lot of sense. The one that really shocked me was App State.
Again, that was just like I have an affinity for App State. I don't know why. It was truly just I really wanted to pick them for no reason.
No, and I don't know if you guys have been out that way, but like Asheville and that part of North Carolina is just absolutely gorgeous. So
Boone and the Smoky Mountains, yeah.
And that would be another one I could drive to. I mean, it's a little bit of a haul, but another one I could drive to. That, and even Clemson. So actually, you've got a few there. So in that sense, I like it. UNC, UVA. So perfect. Well, great. Thanks so much for watching. Again, please let us know in the comments whose draft set of school, who won the draft, and for the Big 12. And be sure to like the video and subscribe. And then also, guys, actually, I almost forgot. Please let everybody know where they can come find you and all your content.
So on the screen there, as you can see by my name, Go Bearcats is the Twitter and the podcast. Catskeller Social Club is actually a collective of Bearcat fan content creators. So you can follow that as well. But if you're trying to interact with me or my co-host Darren, Go Bearcats is the podcast and on social media.
Yeah, and I'm at Bob Trollsby. My podcast is at Cocaine Willie, like we've already talked about at length at this point. We go live pretty much every Tuesday, but sometimes right now we're kind of in like retro replay, rewatching old games of football and basketball right now. But we're gonna get the football content going here soon, and looking forward to facing both of you at some point this season. So I'm looking forward to bringing both of you on at some point for interviews and to preview your teams. That's something we really lean into, is making sure we can get guests from every matchup the week before the matchup. So looking forward to talking to both of you again later this season.
All right.
Absolutely.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, guys. And thank you for watching. Be sure to check out their content. I'll put links to everything in the comment section down below. And as always, go Cougs.